First, a small update on the negotiations. According to information on the network, it was not possible to agree on a strategic solution to the Ukrainian conflict at the time of Sullivan's visit, despite some shifts towards a peaceful settlement, which resulted in a change in Zelensky's rhetoric about the negotiations and their conditions. The United States had to show some kind of public controllability of Zelensky, so the theses of the message were agreed upon by them. Based on this, Russia delayed the decision on Kherson as much as possible in order not to give the Democrats a trump card in the elections. If the red wave of Republicans covered both the Senate and Congress, then it would make sense to keep Kherson in the hope of changing the rhetoric of the United States and the corresponding wave in the EU. However, the Republicans showed themselves worse than forecasts. There is no point in waiting for a sharp change in policy on the Ukrainian case. Russia closely monitored the voting in the United States. Therefore, as soon as the negative results of the US elections were announced, the Russian Federation announced its withdrawal from Kherson and began to implement this scenario. The Democrats did not have time to take advantage of this Ukrainian victory in the elections. And now, good news for the residents of Odessa and bad news for the residents of Donbass. No matter how the war develops, Odessa went to the strategic periphery and became the most distant goal, so now there is little threat to the famous opera house, ! The departure of Russian troops from Kherson means that the issue of throwing at Odessa and cutting off Ukraine from the sea has been finally removed. The Dnieper in the lower reaches is an impregnable barrier for Russian troops, no matter what they say now. Considering that both sides are withdrawing troops from this direction and transferring them to other sectors of the front, and the goals of the NMD have narrowed to the Donbass, it is clear where a more intense fight will begin, if there is no strike from Belarus. This is bad news for the Donbass. True, there were no good ones for 8 years. It is high time, perhaps, to assess the composition and condition of the APU grouping on the first bank of the Dnieper and what options are possible in the coming days. According to the maps, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine keeps 8 combined arms brigades in the Kherson direction, which have recently lost their offensive potential, but are still combat ready. Since it is obvious that the Russian armed forces will not attack in this direction soon, all this is now actually the operational reserve of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to rough estimates, 3 territorial defense brigades and 2 combined arms formations will be quite enough to cover the right bank and carry out a sweep. Thus, we expect the appearance in the Donbass, Zaporozhye or the Svatov direction of 6 new brigades numbering from 4 to 6,000 people. To understand the picture, it is worth noting that the line Pavlovka, Novomikhailivka southwest of Donetsk is hardly, but held by only 1 brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 72nd Brigade, with reinforcements. So there are plenty of options. So far, Svatovo is the most worrying place, where a breakthrough even in the tactical defense zone can create many problems. Rumors. Even on November 9, by the evening, it was clear that an agreement had taken place. Now the armed forces of Ukraine can easily enter even Kherson. According to our information, the office of the president is already preparing a PR event for Kherson. Colleagues write that the OP agreed with the Russians and no one fires at the departing units of the RF armed forces. Now we will observe what Zelensky promised for such a gift and whether this time Bankovaya will cheat the Russians, as it was in the spring after the Istanbul behind-the-scenes agreements. The situation in Kherson compares with Slavyansk in 2014. When the Russian group calmly retreats and withdraws all equipment and personnel without loss. This is not possible without coordination with the West, which means that it was Sullivan's demand voiced in Kyiv by Zelensky. They wrote back in the summer that HIMARS are under the full control of the Americans and it is they who choose the targets. Because of this there are no shelling of crossings and columns. At night the information field has changed. Bankovo was so angry at the fact that the agreement was revealed, or rather the obligation of Ukraine not to interfere with the withdrawal of Russian troops to the left bank of the Dnieper, that at night they decided to shell Russian positions in telegrams. It looked epic. Boom, bang, another arrival, everyone is surrounded. Moreover, everything happened in a text press or from a video of drones that were passed off as motorboats. In a word, the first telegram battle with the encirclement of the 40,000th group of Russian troops, and in the morning it turned out that all this was a fake and information warfare methods. Inside. The source said that no matter what happens in Kherson now, that we are waiting for a freeze of all hostilities along the entire front line. This is part of the big deal that Ukraine agreed to. Bankova knew about it back in September, but they hoped that the situation in the world would change. While everyone is rejoicing at the retreat of the Russian troops, they don't understand what price Ukraine will pay in the future. Everything has been decided for us again.